I don't think it's really a developing situation. It's not like wise new stuff.
Oh, that's the grainiest film. He's so far away, it gets so grainy. Look at this. That video quality.
Ooh.
Okay. So, what smells like grape? I don't think it smells like I'm making steady progress through the grammar packets, but at about 9:30 last night I caved and I couldn't stay awake any longer. So
that is totally fine with me, sorry.
Well, I think for the most part that's a good thing. That is to say, the grammar packets should be a good thing. In most cases, it either, surprisingly, had no effect on the existing average, or it bumped it by 1 to 3%. That's what I've witnessed in second grade.
Can you bring your grade down?
It has, but only so far as I've witnessed, by 1%. That's like the worst case scenario. So overall, I think you should be in the clear. Another thing that I'm doing, just to allay any anxiety or any disagreements with regard to the grammar packets, I will give you 8 points gratis per unit. And that is because, as I'm grading, I'm noticing a lot of situations which could be argued in both ways. And I'm anticipating a lot of you, especially the more academically aggressive, to push it and to push the envelope and to insist that certain things are correct, whereas technically they're incorrect, but you do have an arguable position. So in light of those kinds of things, I'm just going to say 8 points per unit will be added to your score. If you happen to miss fewer points than that, sorry, there's not extra credit, but it will bring you flush with the maximum total. Okay? That would be only under the rare occurrence, but what I'm trying to do is make sure that none of this is damaging. It should be an opportunity for you to reflect on my comments, make some educated, logical decisions about what makes grammatic sense, those kinds of things. That's really what you should take away from it, not a sense of indemnification for just these minuscule things. The reason why I'm going to be very attentive to minutia is, again, not because I love that sort of thing. I don't. But because your essays, and especially your applications, job applications, scholarship applications, they're all going to have essentially a conventions component built in, whether it's acknowledged explicitly or if it remains simply in the imagination of the person reading it. I want your work to be essentially flawless in terms of grammar. And so the harder I can push it in terms of these packets and what points I do deduct and so on, I want you to recognize that that's kind of a light version by comparison to the sort of prejudice that it may excite in others should they witness commonplace mistakes. See kind of what I mean? So I had a girl in second period who said, well, yeah, but these are simple mistakes, and I made a whole lot of them, and I know better than that. I'm like, yes, you do, but I only know that because I know you as a person. On the document, it looks like you have no idea what you're doing. So the document is what speaks for you, not your explanation, in other words. And that's really what you need to attend to. For today's class, we are coming to the end of Act 3. We have just a little ways to go in Act 3. And then, maybe it's Pollyanna-ish of me to expect to make it all the way through Act 4. Maybe that's not going to happen. But just as soon as we do, and this should not overlap more than about 2 days following break, just as soon as we're done, just give you something to anticipate directly, we're going to break into small groups. You're going to select 3 to 4 people with whom ultimately to work. So I should say 2 to 3 people. Your groups should not exceed 4, if possible. On rare occasions, if you come to me with a scene from the play, clearly identified, been vetted, and so on, and you just need 5 people to do it, I'm open to those kinds of negotiations. But 4 tends to be the optimal number. You are not obliged to work with the same people as with whom you worked for the Odyssey map. In fact, I would encourage you to reconsider those experiences and make a still more educated choice. Which are the people with whom you would prefer to work? Exercise an academic judgment in addition to whatever social judgments might come into play. Okay? And as soon as you have your people, figured out, your next task is to reconsider the play from start to finish, knowing that you are allowed to select any scene from the play, not splicing it in any fashion, but any scene from beginning to end, somewhere between 2 and 3 minutes of length. And having selected this, you need to time it out and verify that it is in fact that long, begin to experiment with some part assignments, some casting, and begin considering your interpretation of the scene. Because insofar as we've discussed this play so far, we've treated it as a serious thing. We've attempted to examine emotions that are occasionally raw and occasionally compelling. We've looked at some of the humor, but kept a safe distance when it becomes simply too ribald. There are other ways, however, to approach this play which look nothing like what we have undertaken. You could imagine this entire play, as some do, with whom I disagree, but this entire play as a giant satire about what it is to be teenaged and what it is to make stupid decisions when you are too young to make better ones. A lot of directors have adopted that framework. A lot have attempted to translate it to a more modern age, noting, of course, that for your purposes, you're not allowed to adjust a single word in the original text. What you memorize and deliver must be exact to the page, and one component of your evaluation will be memorization and accuracy. So that's critical. A couple other things just to allow you to visualize this project a little bit better. What we're looking at is maybe some situations in which you have fewer people than you need to act. You're allowed to double, doubling being a practice where one person takes on more than one role. And that usually satisfies the problem. You will be obliged, however, to block out the scene in such a way that the exchange of those roles is obvious, so that there's no confusion to the audience. Likewise, you're allowed to have, if your scene features fewer characters than you have people in the group, you're allowed to have some who are mute. And of course, that usually excites a lot of people, like, oh, I don't have to memorize anything. But that's entirely wrong. Because what you will have to memorize is everything everybody else is saying, so as to guarantee that whatever gestures you supply in place of spoken lines are appropriate to the scene, the exchanges amongst your peers, and so on. You have to fit organically in the ensemble as it exists on stage, whether you're speaking or not. And I would argue that if you have no lines to say, that's a much more difficult kind of thing to do. Okay? Lines usually salvage your character. They take away attention from the other things you may or may not be doing. But if you have no lines to speak, now everything's on your hand motions, on your body language, your posture, your distance, your expressions. All of that needs to be premeditated. What we're about to do is the very opposite to improvisation. Okay? Yes?
I have kind of two questions. First, where will we be performing?
Most likely, we will be performing in this room, because by the time we approach performance, we'll likely abut the ELIs. And so access to the auditorium will be spotty, and we can't overlap.
Okay, and then my second question are, what resources will we have for any sort of like costuming and props? Like, if we wanted to do that, would we have to do it on our own?
Glad you asked. There are no costumes or props. Okay? So you're not obliged to bring them. The only exception that I'll make to that is if your scene involves fencing. And I have a few swords, wooden ones, of course, and you're welcome to use those. But when it comes to it, this happens every year, we all have a kind of fake understanding of the way fencing should work. And on the stage, it's actually a very practiced, very choreographed thing. Otherwise, it tends to look rather amateurish and it deflates. It cancels the action. I have a few basic fencing postures and strategies, tactics that I can share with you, and which I would expect you...
So you're like going to teach me how to fence?
That's an exaggeration. What I will teach you are certain kinds of exchanges which, when witnessed by the uneducated, will appear competent, and exciting, and well-balanced, organized. Okay? And all you need to do is that, right? You don't actually need to know how to fence in order to fence on stage. Okay? So that's just a thumbnail picture of where we're going by the end of the semester. Yes?
So do we have to do a whole scene, or can we just do like the beginning of a scene?
By scene, I'm not referring to like scene 2, scene 3, scene 4. What I'm referring to is something shorter than that, something that you've timed out that is approximately 2.5 to 3 minutes, something like that, maybe a little bit longer, but no shorter. It can cross acts, it can cross scene divisions as they exist in the script, but it cannot omit or leave out information or text in the middle. It must be continuous wherever you put it in the script. Does that make sense? Yes?
So are there any more parts of this project other than just performing in front of everyone?
Yes, there are. So in groups, you'll be documenting all of your decisions. So if you're unfamiliar with this term, blocking, it means figuring out where people will stand and how they will occupy space physically vis-a-vis the other people on stage. You'll have to justify all of those choices. And we'll have some discussions in class so as to make obvious what goes into that judgment. You'll also have to figure out how you made your casting assignments and document that. You will also have to document your interpretation. That is to say, what is communicated to the audience? What is your intended message? That could be as simple as a theme. It could be as complicated as a story. Okay? But I need to know what it is you intend the audience to walk away from. And kind of the interesting thing is, the audience will have note-taking supplies provided them, on one part of which they will be able to put down what was the interpretation from their point of view. And you as a group will have an entertaining time comparing what the audience thinks you were trying to say against what you intended to communicate. And sometimes that's a surprising sort of... Yes?
I was going to ask, so like when we're presenting, does it have to be like word for word exactly? Like
Yes, it
even
does.
if we make a small mistake, like switch keywords?
Inaccuracies are the same as deductions. However, traditionally I have given the following kind of thing. I've given the following kind of grace. So, if you have, let's say, a spot in the line which only affects 3 words, I will wait until the 4th word affected before I start taking off points. So I'll give you just a grace period before I start those deductions, because usually there's a level of anxiety that will trip up the first couple of lines anyway. And so I'm not going to try and penalize you for those. But for the rest of it, beyond that 3-word or so grace, it has to be true to form. And that's actually an easier thing to do than you think it is. Every year, people are apprehensive, especially about the memorization, because that tends to be a skill that you never practice in school. With the exception, perhaps, of vocabulary lists or anatomy diagrams or those kinds of things, it's spotty. And it's certainly not usually the kind of memorization that goes for an entire text, maybe a lengthy monologue. I've had students in the past do the Queen Mab speech, like from front to back. Mercutio's speech to Romeo and Benvolio. And it works. It's entirely possible. And I'll discuss with you techniques, strategies to memorize just as soon as you have your casting assignments and I know with whom I should be working and so on. Okay? Any other questions? Sorry? I don't think that we'll get that far, but we'll get as far as we can. We'll probably bleed over into the next 1 or 2 days at most in the week following break. Yes?
How does it feel being living in snow?
I didn't even know that the loft was made of snow.
You've never seen Frozen, guys?
Should we open the window? You look a little melting.
He's going to keep the cost.
Why do you know these kinds of things?
Are you going to wear that?
Because I did a little fencing in college, but...
Snowman,
Where did you go to
that's new.
college?
University of Montana.
Alright, I'm gonna go search the class list.
It's not a class, it's a club. And there's a fencing club in Moscow.
There is a fencing club in Moscow.
There is. Yeah.
They've got.
Are you?
Yeah, they do.
In Disney too.
Did you just happen to have the Olaf suit lying around?
No. No, this is supplied to me generously by the Buddy Club.
How is your sense of smell affected by the carrot?
Sorry, are you
That
like?
might even be true. The carrot should increase my vision.
Are you comfortable? Like, is it really, really like comfy?
It's just warm.
Wait, I have a question. So I noticed that you have coffee from the co-op. Did you go to the co-op and
I did.
get? Oh, nice. And did you wear the coffee?
So if they see you regularly, did they react?
No.
He must be from Moscow. It's okay.
That guy.
Has your daughters?
No, I haven't. Naturally, I haven't worn this home. I saw it for the first time yesterday at school, and I put it on this morning when I got to school.
How much would it be per hour for you to wear that suit?
More than you can afford.
That sounds like a challenge.
I mean, if we pulled 30 people here for,
No.
1 hour.
I mean, if it's $400 for a
No way.
day.
So it's scene 5 of Act 3. We have Juliet and Romeo, naturally, and enters the nurse.
Page 8.
Now it's
Yeah.
Did we manage? Oh, we're in Act 4. I'm sorry, Act 4, Scene 1. Sorry, I forgot to move the bookmark. So, Act 4, Scene 1, and we're at line 120 in my book, which is just when Juliet says, "Give me, oh, tell me not of fear."
What page?
I'm not sure.
That's 91.
Is it 91?
It's 94.
94? 94. This is Act 1 still of, or excuse me, Act 4, Scene 1 of Act 4, Scene 1 of Act 4. And this is Juliet's line. It says, give me, oh, tell me not of fear. Okay, we should have these parts assigned from yesterday, then we'll recast in just about
Oh boy. What page around?
6 lines.
Oh.
That's me, right? Fire?
If I remember it, yeah.
Okay, hold. Get you gone, be strong and prosperous in this resolve. I'll send a friar with speed to Mantua with my letters to thy lord.
Love give me strength, and strength shall help afford. Farewell, dear father.
Okay. So what are they plotting to do? What is the plan, actually? Yes.
So she's going to take something that will make it seem like she's dead, but then she'll wake up after a little while. So when they take her to whatever the place is called, the tomb, yeah,
Or the sepulcher, or the tomb,
yeah.
the monument.
Then like they'll take her there and they'll she's dead, but then she'll wake up and Romeo can come find her and they'll run away.
Okay. Have we talked at all about the bier or funeral customs or those kinds of things?
No.
Okay. So we have Juliet. She's going to be discovered dead in her bedroom. That's the plan. And having been found dead there, she will be lifted onto a bier, B-I-E-R. This is a flat, carryable surface. Usually has a couple of handles protruding out either end. And people will then process with her on that platform, on that bier, some distance from the Capulet estate, where she died, to the monument itself, where she will be laid upon a kind of catafalque, upon a raised surface upon which they deposit the bier and allow her to remain for a period of a few days. There are no preservative strategies for newly deceased people, so it's important that this not be too long a process in which people are invited into the tomb so as to pay their respects, but it will be long enough, especially because she is a rich person, she is well known, and so on. They will probably leave her on that bier for as long as it takes the vial to lose its efficacy, for her to wake up. Notice that she's not placed in a casket. She is not in any way in danger of suffocation, because again, her body is laying in state. It's available to the outside so that people can look at it and say goodbye. Okay. The other half of this plan is that Romeo will be notified that this has happened, and that it is orchestrated, that in fact she is not dead, so that he can come back from Mantua, which is a neighboring city, at which he is now in exile, and be with her at the moment when she awakes. So that when she awakes, Romeo will be right present and virtually capable of lifting her into his arms, and now they leave the tomb, and presumably they are on their way back to Mantua in exile, where they will live until this whole thing blows over. That's the plan. Okay? So, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, there are a whole lot of gears in this machine. But I want you to consider how the options, apart from a fake death, actually look. Well, I mean, is it fair to say that she could simply leave?
Nope. Not really, no.
Why?
Because her parents would track her down and bring her back and probably imprison her.
And why? What makes that almost necessary? Yes, exactly. Right? She's worth too much to just let go. Can she actually, now that she's had her interview with her father, can she actually refuse to marry Paris and marry whom she wishes? No. So she's disowned at that rate. What happens if she marries Paris and goes that direction?
Well, she's already married to Romeo, so that's
against like God's will.
She's
exactly. Yeah, she's in hot water because now she's married to more than one person at the same time. And can you imagine how else that would play out?
She has two husbands, and one is a secret.
Yes, but that's all the same problem. What I'm identifying is what would naturally follow between Juliet and Paris, etc. Right? She's going to live with Paris for the rest of her life as his wife. And he is going to expect certain things of her, which she cannot give in good conscience. Notice how she feels about him really. When he makes an appearance, she's revolted, which would be the worst kind of slavery, honestly, because she's not allowed to leave him, and yet she has to be with him as his wife. That is a real kind of hell. So she's weighing those options. Those are the ones that present themselves to her. And now it becomes not at all so confusing why she selects a fake death. Because honestly, when you're looking around, it's like, that seems the most harmless. That seems like the best action, the best course of action. Okay?
Wait, isn't disowning, if she got disowned, wouldn't it be the same thing?
Why can't she just get disowned and then leave?
Yeah.
Well,
because she won't get the money either way.
Well, if they wait for it to blow over, there is still some chance that her parents will forgive her. It's a really, really small chance, but it still exists.
Amara's question sticks, though. If she accepts being disowned, and she marries somebody who's already wealthy, like Romeo, perhaps it undermines the importance of her inherited wealth. Maybe that's true. Recognize, though, as many of you have done, how shortly they have been associated, Romeo and Juliet, and what she, as a fairly cynical person on occasion, remember she will, and I forget, no, she hasn't yet, but she will question even those who are closest to her in terms of their motives. Maybe this will be more obvious to you once we get into the next act, but what I'm saying is, Juliet might start thinking if she's worth nothing financially, perhaps Romeo will have an obvious incentive to marry somebody else. Or maybe she won't be as important to him. I mean, those kinds of fears make themselves to virtually everyone, regardless of the strength of affection or other things underpinning the marriage. Yes? Yes. So here is 4-2, second scene of Act 4. And I've lost track. Are we in this corner? We're over here? Thank you. And you're the first one? Okay, so you'll be Capulet, you'll be a servingman. It might be indicated in yours as a boy. Is it servingman or boy?
Servingman.
Servingman? Okay. Boy. Then we need the nurse. And we need Juliet. We need Juliet. Yeah, Juliet.
And Lady Capulet.
Thank you. And Lady Capulet. And that's it for scene 2.
So many guests invited as here are writ. Sir, go hire me 20 cunning cooks.
You shall have none ill, sir, for I'll try if they can lick their fingers.
How canst thou try them so?
Marry, sir, 'tis an ill cook that cannot lick his own fingers. Therefore, he cannot lick his fingers. Goes not with me.
So licking one's fingers is kind of an unsanitary thing to do, according to most, but why would it be important that the cook can lick his own fingers? Yeah.
Just be able to taste it.
He needs to be satisfied and happy with what he's made. The person who can't is probably not. So let's keep going.
Go, be gone. We shall be much unfurnished for this time. What is my daughter gone to Friar Lawrence?
Aye, forsooth.
Well, he may chance to do some good on her. A peevish, self-willed harlotry it is.
See where she comes from shrift with merry look.
How now, my headstrong? Where have you been gadding?
Uh-huh.
Where I have learnt me to repent the sin of disobedient opposition. To you and your behests am I enjoined, to holy Lawrence to fall prostrate here, to beg your pardon. Pardon, I beseech you. Henceforward, I am ever ruled by you.
Send for the county. Go tell him of this. I'll have this knot knit up tomorrow morning.
I met the youthful lord at Lawrence cell, and gave him what becomed love I might, not stepping o'er the bounds of modesty.
Why, I am glad, aunt. This is well. Stand up. This is as asked should
Yes.
be. Let me see the county. I, Mary, go, I say, and fetch him hither. Now, afore God, this reverend holy friar, all our world city is much bound to him.
Nurse, will you go with me into my closet to help me sort such needful ornaments as you think to fit furnish me tomorrow?
No, not till Thursday. There's time enough.
Go, nurse, go with her. We'll to church tomorrow.
We shall be short in our provision. 'Tis now near night.
Tush I will, sir, about, and all things shall be well, I warrant thee, wife. Go thou to Juliet, help her to deck her up her. I'll not to bed tonight, let me alone. I'll play the housewife for this once. What ho! They are all forth, while I will wake myself to County Paris, to prepare of him against tomorrow. My heart is wondrous light, since this same wayward girl is so reclaimed.
Okay. What has Juliet done in that scene? Yes.
She forwards to Capulet.
Her father. And what else? Yes.
She pretends to give in to the marriage, like she's gonna
That's
go
right.
through with it.
That's right. She's following the friar's advice. Yes. Sure. So, Lord Capulet is now ebullient because everything seems to be going his way. And we will have then with Ellie, Juliet, and Lady Capulet. And that's it. Yeah.
Those attires are best, but gentle nurse, I pray thee leave me to myself tonight, for I have need of many orisons, to move the heavens to smile upon my state, which, well thou knowest, is cross and full of sin.
What? Are you busy, ho? Need you my help?
No, madam, we have called such necessaries as are behoveful for our state tomorrow. So please you, let me now be left alone, and let the nurse this night sit up with you, for I am sure you have your hands full all in this so sudden business.
Good night. Get thee to bed and rest, for thou hast me.
Farewell. God knows when we shall meet again. I have a faint cold beer thrills through my veins, that almost freezes up the heat of life. I'll call them back again to comfort me. Nurse, what should she do here? My dismal scene I needs must act alone. Come, Vial. What if this mixture do not work at all? Shall I be married then tomorrow morning? No, no, this shall forbid it. Lie thou there. What if it be a poison which the friar subtly hath ministered to have me dead, lest in this marriage he should be dishonored, because he married me before to Romeo? I fear it is, and yet methinks it should not, for he hath still been tried a holy man. How if, when I am laid into the tomb, I wait before the time that Romeo come to redeem me? There's a fearful point. Shall I not then be stifled in the vault, to whose foul mouth no wholesome air breathes in, and there die strangled ere my Romeo comes? Or, if I live, is it not very like the horrible conceit of death and night, together with the terror of the place, as in a vault, an ancient receptacle, where for this many hundred years the bones of all my buried ancestors are packed away, where bloody Tybalt, yet but green in the earth, lies festering in his shroud, where, as they say, at some hours in the night spirits resort. Alack, alack, is it not like that I, so early waking, what with loathsome smells, then shrieks like mandrakes torn out of the earth, that living mortals hearing them run mad? Or, if I wake, shall I not be distraught, environed with all these hideous fears, and madly play with my forefathers' joints, and pluck the mingled Tybalt from his shroud, and in this rage with some great kinsman's bone, as with a club dash out my desperate brains? Oh, look, methinks I see my cousin's ghost, seeking out Romeo, that did spit his body upon a rapier's point. Stay, Tybalt, stay, Romeo, 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 I dream.